Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
If you have ever had anybody, an older adult mostly, but it could happen with someone else, in a nursing home, you worry. You worry because you can't be there all the time and the person is being cared for. And it's not like being at your home or their home. And so things do happen. And they're not done intentionally many times, but if you're not being really cautious and careful, things happen to people whom we love. And we were very happy when Michael Brevda, who is an attorney, but he specializes in lots of things to do with the older adults, but mostly he specializes in cases where maybe things have happened and you don't know what to do about it. And he does. And so Michael Brevda is our guest today, and in Boomer Times, in the May issue, you'll see his article. It's called Nursing Home Survival Guide. Michael, thank you for coming on our show.
Always a pleasure, Anita. Thanks for having me.
And Michael, it's rare that we get someone who is as caring as you are, but as smart as you are, so that you are doing something that our families need, but you're not doing it irrationally.
I appreciate it. I don't know I don't know how to respond to that compliment, but I do appreciate it. It's an important, it's an important check on these otherwise loosely regulated, loosely controlled facilities. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, because in my profession, I have seen a lot of things happen, and yet it's obvious that the whole business of caring for elders is tough. It's hard. And you've said that in your articles. We know that if you're a nurse or you're an aide, that it isn't always fun. If you have a good heart and you know what you're doing, and the facility, that's important. The facility embraces you and the facility supports you, you can do a better job, but it's not always the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why it's important for those of us that can advocate, for those of us that, have some knowledge about the long-term care industry and that have eyes on these places. It's important that when we see something that's not going right, that we blow the whistle in order to remedy that before it devolves into some really big injury or wrongful death.
I've not asked this of you before, but can you really go through a case so people can really understand what we're talking about? We're not talking about somebody who just didn't get to the bathroom on time. I want to talk about something that's really serious that didn't have to happen.
Right. So in terms of the injuries that we commonly see that arise in litigation, there could be a wide variety of the causes of the injury, but the injuries themselves are pretty consistent. I'd say the top two that we see are patient falls, meaning the resident has dementia, Alzheimer's, maybe they have unsteady gait. They're not who they used to be in terms of walking. They need assistance with ambulating, which means they need help and supervision with walking. And they suffer falls. Not every fall is preventable. However, what happens is when a nursing home or an assisted living facility has a resident that is prone to falls, they have a duty under the law, both Florida law and federal regulations, to make sure that they put in proper fall preventative measures.
For example,
frequent supervision. Another example would be a bed alarm or a chair alarm, which is like a pad that one would sit on in their wheelchair or underneath their bed, that if they get up, if they go try to ambulate without help, it goes beep, 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 beep. It lets the nurses know, oh gosh, Mr. Smith is up out of bed. He doesn't know what he's doing because he has Alzheimer's or dementia. We need to go intervene before an injury happens.
And wait, I have to then say something.
Sure.
There are beeps that go on and aren't attended to.
Well, therein lies the negligence. That would be something that we would consider to be negligence. So if you recognize that Mr. Smith is a fall risk and you put in arguably proper fall preventative measures, but you don't act on those, you don't fulfill that duty properly, that is negligence. That's where, myself or my law firm would come in and investigate a nursing home abuse or a nursing home negligence lawsuit. But other than falls, we see bed sores, which are pressure ulcers. And as everyone knows, those are wounds that develop primarily on your backside or your heels. And these pressure ulcers develop for one reason, as the name implies, unrelieved pressure. So that pressure, being able to reposition and get off of the affected area, these older folks can't do that either because of their mental cognition, because they're too confused to know to reposition themselves, or because of their physical issue, they cannot get off their backside. If they're left to sit in that same position for hours or days at a time, the skin will actually break down into pressure ulcers. So falls and pressure ulcers are probably our top two injuries that we see. But other than that, anytime we see a patient that has rapid weight loss, significant weight loss of more than 10% of their body mass index, so if they come in weighing 130 and they go to the hospital weighing 88 pounds, we have to question what's going on. Are you feeding them? Are you giving them water? So rapid weight loss is kind of a red flag for dehydration or malnutrition. And then there's always wrongful death. If somebody appears to be doing fine, maybe they're there for short-term rehab, maybe they're supposed to return home and return to some normalcy in life, and all of a sudden they pass away, we have to go back and investigate, what was the cause of death? Why did this happen so suddenly? Why did the doctors or the other healthcare providers outside of the facility not have any indication that this person was nearing the end? So those would be primarily the cases that we come across.
And bruises?
Bruises, sure. Bruises can indicate either unwitnessed falls, or they could indicate physical abuse at the hands of either a rogue staff member or a confused combative resident. But when we have a case where, it's just a couple bruises, and I don't mean to minimize that. I don't mean to be inhumane. But if it's just a couple bruises, I don't know that it may warrant a full civil lawsuit being filed.
Also because a lot of people, their skin is very thin,
Sure.
and maybe just something hit them without it being so. But that's what really makes your investigation very critical, because now you have to really figure out what's going on. Who do you get to ask? How are they lying? Who knew? Who didn't know? And you're such a tender, you're very sweet and very tender. I don't know how you could be mean, or how do you get all these answers?
Talk to the people I litigate against. I don't know that they would share the same opinion, but I do appreciate it. But you have to, the rubber has to meet the road at some point. And unfortunately, there are defendants that will lie, cheat, and steal and try to conceal the truth. And it is our job. And really, it's such an awesome responsibility, because our clients entrust in us. They only get one shot to bring their case, and they entrust that to us. So it's really a heavy duty that we bear. And we want to make sure that we uncover every single piece of dirt that we can. So I would say, although I appreciate the kind words, I don't know that my adversaries would share the same opinion. I think we're pretty relentless in our discovery and our investigation and finding out what really happened.
And you've said before that if you don't find anything, after you take them either to court or something, no one pays you. So you're not going to do this casually. You know that there's something serious there because you've investigated it. So
Right.
I'm talking to Michael Brevda, and he is with the Senior Justice Law Firm, which I think is a great name. Is it really called Senior Justice?
It is. It's Senior Justice Law Firm, seniorjustice.com. It's direct. It's to the point. It's what we do. We help older folks that were wrongfully hurt, whether it's inside facilities or, car accidents or slip and falls, whatever it is. Our focus is representing older folks that get wrongfully injured.
Oh, okay. So we haven't talked about the car accidents. We know that in your last article in Boomer Times, you did discuss that. And how does that work?
Well, it all works on the same contingency fee, which means we don't get a dime unless we make a recovery for the client. And it means we have to be pretty selective in which cases we take. So we do pass on most cases because it's a business decision. We have to make sure that we think there's, a large enough recovery that justifies our involvement.
So what happens in some car accidents? Let's go over some of that.
These are 4, 5, 6-ton vehicles, and they don't drive themselves yet. I think in 10 to 15 years, we may not be having this conversation, but in 2017, you drive on the roads of South Florida, you see at any given intersection, when I pull up to it, person next to me is either on their phone, doing their makeup, eating a sandwich, or all of the above. And, unfortunately, these vehicles are massive death machines. I hate to sound dramatic, but they are. And when a person, especially an older person that may have osteoporosis, that may have underlying conditions, when you get popped by a massive vehicle, whether it's a T-bone or a rear end, it does a number on your spinal column. And that's why you hear so much about whiplash. What happens is when your car is going 45 miles an hour, the physics of it is your body is going 45 miles an hour. So if you face that impact and it's a direct blow, that is a sizable physical impact to a body, your human body that is going 45 miles an hour. So we represent a number of older folks here in Boca Del Rey area that were in car accidents. And
but you have to find out, was it their fault or not? I guess that's the big part.
Let me tell you, it's a lot easier to figure out who's at fault in a car accident versus a nursing home case.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it's, we have the police investigation. We always, with the car accidents, the photos speak volumes. He can say whatever he wants and she could say whatever she wants. But if that dent is here, it's pretty apparent where the point of impact was. So the pictures speak volumes about
so
what really happened.
Would you take people's cases if they were not a senior?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have been for years, we've been immersed in the community. Back in the day, we used to do some sponsored lunches out at Kings Point and Century Village. So we've always felt at home with the senior citizen community of this area of Southern Palm Beach County. But yeah, absolutely. I've got a client right now that's 8 years old, if you could believe it, victim of a car accident. Yeah, it's very unfortunate. She was in the back seat of her mom's car, and they just got slammed into by a landscaping truck. So we have, and then you contrast that. That's an 8-year-old client of mine. I think I almost said her name, but I don't want to publicly air out her name.
No, you can't do that.
She's 99 years old, and I'm praying, knock on wood, that she gets to see 100.
Because of a car accident?
No, she's actually a victim of a fall inside an assisted living facility. But she survived.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm going to go back to that. So let's say that let's say there's long-term health care insurance.
Sure.
And someone is in having that come, and let's say they're at home. Things could happen at home too, and the insurance company's paying. So they're not going to go to their insurance company for any of that. They're going to come to you, aren't they, if they think something's wrong? Insurance companies, like a home long-term health care insurance, they don't fight anything, do they? Isn't it you that would go in if there's something wrong?
Yeah. If somebody, are you talking about if somebody fell at home with like a private aid?
Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody falls at home with a private aid, it's interesting. A lot of people come to me and they say, look, I had a private aid. They were supposed to be with mom or my husband or whoever it is for 24 hours a day. They were always supposed to be watching. They left. They went to go make a sandwich. They went to, go pick up McDonald's, whatever happened. And then mom fell or dad fell or my husband fell, broke his hip. It turns out that the aid doesn't have insurance.
Just good. That was my next question.
They always say
a
this
lot
to
of
me.
them don't have insurance.
They
don't go through a nursing service.
The individual aid may not have service. However, the registry or the company that provides the aid,
if they have that, and that's the other
if they
point,
have it,
right?
sure. But in my experience, most of the cases that come through our doors, there's a registry or some kind of company that quarterbacked that aid getting to that house. And it's really an interesting legal battle, and I'll spare you the details. But inevitably, what we find is when we send the letter, saying, hey, I'm Michael Brevda, I'm from the senior justice law firm, show me your insurance policy, they go, no, that's not our aid. They're an independent contractor. They're not an employee. And that's where the legal battle goes into, because we have to prove that even though they're independent contractors, they had the right to control that aid. And I think, humbly, we're pretty good at proving it. So
yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's an interesting tug of war.
Okay, so then let's say, though, the insurance company really, the long-term health care insurance company really has nothing to do with it. They're just providing the money to take care of the care. That there's nothing there that happens, right?
No. We would not sue an insurance company that's providing good care
It's
to the
particular
patient.
caregiver.
It's the negligent,
negligence.
the
Right.
negligent caretaker,
Right.
and or their employer.
Well, it's a very involved subject because
It is.
you don't have, just like with policemen attacking people, maybe they shouldn't. There's cameras, and most of the time there are not cameras. Although I'm hearing that more and more that parents are having cameras in their homes for their children, and probably they should for the elder family members.
Yep, we talked about this briefly last time, but I think it's a very topical subject because I'm getting more and more calls saying, "Hey, nobody got hurt, but I want to ask you a legal question. Can I put a camera in mom's room?" And I always say the same thing, which is what I'll repeat now, that unless you get the permission, the express permission of everyone who's going to be in that room, you're really not supposed to film other caretakers. So it doesn't matter that your mom is okay with it. It's about that CNA that's going to be coming in and out of her room. She or he has not given their express permission to be filmed. So you really need, what I would recommend is before you sign the contract with the nursing home or the ALF, add in there that they're okay with their employees being filmed. Because if you take care of it on the front end, there's no issue. And then if they fight you on it, what are you trying to hide? Why are you afraid of me filming
Right.
the care that's being provided to my mom?
Yeah, I didn't remember that we talked about that. I'm glad you brought that back up again because that's so important to check on that. All right, so now we've kind of covered a lot of that, but now let's just go to nursing homes. There are different nursing homes. On a scale of 1 to 10, they probably go from 1 to 10, right?
I think negative 10 to 10.
Right. And some of the mom and pops, there are a lot of mom and pops there, and they're good because they do give great attention, but it's really individual. It really depends on what the mission of that organization is, don't you think? And if they will pay the money, they need to have enough people helping. Even that being said, you're still working with an individual who, a patient, who can, in 1 second slip. And it's not that anybody did anything wrong, but yet they can slip and they can really hurt themselves. So how do you prevent that?
Well,
You can't sit on that person constantly.
you sound like a defense lawyer, Anita, but no, it's a great question. Not every injury is preventable. In fact, we're dealing with such a vulnerable patient population that it's inevitable. Their mortality, morbidity is inevitable. It's going to happen. They're going to get ill and they're going to pass away. We all do. So the question is, was the injury preventable? And that's something that we do internally at the firm. We review it. On every single case, we have it reviewed by an expert, not a lawyer, an actual medical expert, either a doctor or a nurse. They give their thumbs up or thumbs down. So it is a very rigorous screening process. But we could talk about this for probably the remainder of the day, but in summation, to make it as short as possible, you look at the rules from the government, Florida and the federal government. You look at both sets of rules and regulations. Then you look at the administrative policies, the policies and procedures that come down from the corporation, so the internal rules of the facility. And you just look, did they follow them? If I have the case that I came in because I had my name tag on from a different facility that shall remain nameless. It's a case where a woman was Baker acted and taken to a local hospital here in Palm Beach County. She required a 1-to-1 sitter, meaning she needed somebody to watch her because she was disturbed. She was a threat to herself and a threat to others. The sitter left because she had 4 other patients to watch.
Absolutely, that's negligent, isn't it? Of course.
So, you look at the policies and procedures from the hospital, and they say, yeah, sitter has to watch 1-to-1. If they get up, they have to tell somebody, hey, keep an eye on Mrs. Smith because I have to use the restroom. And unfortunately, as we see so often, even though this caretaker, this individual was negligent, quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes, she was set up for failure because she was given by her supervisor 4 patients that she's supposed to watch one-on-one in 4 different geographical areas. It's impossible.
Well, I want everyone who's listening to really write this number down because you may not need it today. You may not need it tomorrow, but you may need it a month from now. You don't really know who to call when you want help, but I can really strongly recommend Michael Brevda. That's Brevda. He is with Senior Justice Law Firm, and I'm going to give you the phone number. If you will just write this down, you can write it. This is Pencil Talk Radio. The office number is 561 561-717-0817. Again, it's 561-717-0817. And I really feel so strongly about being I guess it's the protector of people who can't protect themselves. That's really what you're doing. That's what I do. When I've gone into nursing facilities or ALFs or even just independent places, I do see a lot of possibilities of things that are wrong. And for instance, sometimes you go into a bathroom in one of these facilities, and there's water all over the floor, and that person will slip for sure. And that now you have to go and prove that. So now, if you are the family member of a person who has had a slip and fall, you probably are not capable of finding out what really happened because, let's face it, the company, isn't going to openly say, oh, yes, we did it. You may have to hire someone. And now, what are the questions that you would ask? So let's say, okay, Mrs. Jones calls and says, Mr. Brevda, my mother was in a nursing facility and she slipped and she fell in the bathroom, a common bathroom. And so what would you say? And how do you handle that from then on?
In terms of screening it, whether it's a case or not? If it's a fall case, my number one question is, and it might surprise you, is had she fallen before? And, they'll say, oh, and it's interesting to see the kind of the recoil from the kid where they say only 2 or 3 times before, when in actuality, as a nursing home abuse lawyer, I'm looking for more falls because it shows a pattern of falling where the interventions were not working. So then if a resident suffers 2 falls, then 3 falls, then on the 4th fall, you have to ask yourself, what are you all doing to prevent future falls? Because on fall number 5 or 6, if that's the big one, if that's the one that resulted in a brain bleed or a broken hip or whatever the injury may be, it's pretty easy for me to go back and say, look, you had red flag number 1 with fall number 1, red flag number 2 with fall number 2, et cetera, et cetera. So my main question with a fall case is, how many falls did they have before? And contrary to what you'd think, more falls actually makes the case more egregious because it shows that what they're doing isn't working. Did that answer your question or no?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Perfect because that's a very good point. So one fall is one thing, it's just a slip. But if they are falling, there's something that's not working. You're right. And the other thing is when people are using walkers and they're using wheelchairs, they need to really do it. But, a lot of the older adults don't want to use walkers.
Sure.
They don't want to get in their wheelchair.
Sure.
And so they take that on themselves. But you're saying that if they're in a facility, they need to know, Mrs. Jones, get your walker. Get back in the wheelchair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that I run into with, family members that will come. They'll come to our office and they'll say, look, mom fell, broke her hip, but I have to warn you, she wouldn't listen. She wouldn't listen. They told her to stay in bed. They told her to buzz for assistance using the call bell. She wouldn't listen.
That's it.
So that is what I would call blame the victim, because most of these folks, we don't go into nursing homes because we're perfectly aware of what's going on and we're perfectly healthy. I mean, these people are going in to facilities because they need 24 hours, 7-day a week nursing care around the clock. So if somebody does have confusion, even if it's intermittent confusion, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever it is, we can't rely on educating them to stay in bed because they're going to forget. That's a byproduct of their cognitive status. So just because a patient maybe didn't listen to a nurse or even a child saying, hey, mom, you've got to stay in bed, that could be a product of her confusion, not of her being defiant and refusing healthcare, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, of course it does. But we're really getting down into the typical, day-to-day happenings. And now going to the car. How many times have we said you shouldn't be driving a car?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a big one for you.
It is. And that is, look, there's 2 sides to the coin. A lot of the auto cases that we talked about, the car accident cases that my firm handles, involve a defendant who maybe should have given up the keys a couple years ago. They involve defendants who caused an accident. And, luckily that's what insurance is for. They have auto insurance. Usually that person is not personally liable that causes the car accident. Their insurance company would take care of it. But sure, it is, that is a very real danger with some folks, as their vision and their reaction time starts to slow, there needs to be a family decision as to whether the key should be taken away.
Not an easy thing to do, but I'm going to go back to the insurance company. So let's say there's an accident. An insurance company takes care of it. Why are you needed?
Well, I'm needed. I always joke, if insurance companies did the right thing, I would be out of a job. I come in when the insurance company doesn't do the right thing.
I mean, they don't give enough money. Let's say they may say, okay, and they'll give a certain amount, but then there are a lot more bills and they won't pay them. Is that typical?
I wish it wasn't. It is the norm. It is. There is a pretty recent study nationwide, and it was confirmed that folks that are injured in a car accident that go it alone, that don't have representation, receive 1/5, like 1/5, what a person would receive if they had a lawyer. So that, and it's not one of these things where the lawyers get all the money and the person walks away with nothing. This is something where a person that has representation receives significantly more money than somebody who decides to go it alone, because unfortunately, just like you mentioned earlier, with the nursing home isn't going to bend over backwards to get you the records to show that they screwed up. These insurance companies, the way that they make money is to collect premiums and not pay out on claims. That's the business model for
Michael
insurance.
Brevda, I love talking to you. I save up all my questions, and next time you come, I've got a lot more questions because you're good. And and there's all sorts of things that happen that. So I think people should, if they have any accident, just call you, and then you'll see what happens, and you'll find out how much the insurance company's giving you. Okay, that's not enough. We're going to go after it, right? Anyway, okay. So let's get someone to call you. His number is 561-717-0817. 561-717-0817. It's Michael Brevda, Brevda, senior justice law firm, and you don't have to be a senior.
You don't? Thank you so much,
Thank
Anita.
you very much.
I really appreciate it.